8 dental practices and 2 labs is Dr. Marc Faber, Nacho Nuts. I got a chance to meet Dr. Marc at Dykema through the awesome Ron who's watching him with us here. Marc, thanks so much for joining me on Practice Owner Success Strategies, where we feature dentist owning practices from 1 to triple digits. I don't think we've had any quadruple digits people. We had Yaya and Sam on recently. So tell us a little bit about your story and what inspired you to own multiple practices.
So first of all, Dr. Goodman, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually a big fan of what you do.
Thanks.
I think reaching out to the younger generation, younger doctors is really important. And I don't think there's anybody better than you. So
I appreciate it. Wow. My aunt would really like you. I'm going to tell her all about you. I appreciate that.
But yeah, so I'm a second generation dentist. My father practiced in Midtown, New York, and in Brooklyn for over 30 years. And as I went into dentistry and I started working, I worked with him, and I found it very difficult to be profitable in the city. So I went out on my own. And as soon as I went out on my own, my father unfortunately got really sick. I got a form of dementia. And I realized at a very, really, really early on in practice ownership that my parents weren't financially ready for retirement. And not only that, my father, they were about to have massive medical bills and stuff like that. And there was pressure on me to actually provide for my family.
Jesus.
So I went this route of business, learning from my father's mistakes, almost early on, like 2 years out of residency, basically.
I appreciate you sharing that story. I like to interject if my wife will interrupt or inject. I got to work with my father for many years. It was an awesome opportunity. Sadly, he passed away in 2016. But one of the things I noticed that seems to be a theme through dental school is they don't really teach dentists about running businesses, how to run practices. So you mentioned your dad's mistakes. If someone's listening in, you have a great dad who was a great dentist, but made business mistakes, we'll call it that. What were some of those mistakes?
Well, inherently, one thing, the business was built around his health.
Yeah,
that was the risk. Now, there would be a lot of doctors listening to this, especially young doctors who are afraid, hey, I can't buy a second practice or third practice. It's too risky. I'm going to say the exact opposite. If you have a practice and you're there by yourself and there's nobody else there with you, that's risky in my mind.
I want to interject, and I want to have my dentistry operating team do some pulsing. Is your practice built around your health? I think that's one of the, I was actually at a mastermind recently where a dentist next to me held up his hand and he said, I'm just so tired of everything being built around this hand. And it was really, eye-opening to me. What you said was key, because if you're there by yourself, we've inspired dentists to hire their very first associates recently, because that was basically the most vulnerable thing in your dad's business life. If he couldn't work, it was all done.
Correct. And everything was dependent on his health. And there was no plan. There was no business. So he was the business. And I from within the first year that I was working, I hired an associate and I started sharing patients and started not really stepping away because I kept on growing, but I stepped away a little bit from the chair. And it's one of the hardest things for a doctor to do after 20 years of seeing everybody. How can you step away? No one wants to see you, especially if your name's on the door. So yeah. that is something that is, that I learned the hard way through my father, but knowing how to share and grow a business that's self-sufficient, that's not dependent on your health, was probably the most important lesson that I ever learned.
I love that, Sharon. We actually have the awesome Ronnie watching in, and at the Women in DSO, I saw her speak for the first time, and she said her license plate says OMG 6 kids. And people take pictures of it. You should say OMG 8 practices, but you have to be able to put in another practice. But let's now talk about my failed dreams of playing professional basketball in the NBA. That didn't work out.
Mine too, by the way.
So let's now just walk our audience through, whether they're watching in live or on demand. It all starts with a layup. It all starts with your first shot. So let's just talk about your first practice. Where did that come from? Was it your dad? Was it an acquisition? Where does it start? I want to know about your very first practice.
All right. So I had one, when I went to NYU, and we had one business course when we were there. This was already in like 2007. And I graduated in like 2009, 2010. I had one business class, and I forgot the name. I think the guy who spoke was like the head of HealthPlex or whatever, who I'm not too fond of, but he actually gave some good advice then. And he said that one of the most important things to keep in mind is the ratio of number of patients to the number of doctors in an area.
Right.
So if you have a very good ratio, you're going to be successful. Now that in Midtown New York, that ratio is probably not so good.
Yeah.
And the same thing in LA and all the major metropolitan areas. However, in the suburbs and beyond, that ratio goes way up and well into the favor of the doctors. So that was my logic. I happen to have found a location where there was a very fast growing population which needed tremendous amount of dental services, and there wasn't enough doctors there. And so that's how I found my first place in Monroe, New York.
So Monroe, New York, I mean, you just shared a lot of value there. So we have, the number of dentists looked at against the number of patients in the area, what that ratio is, and I practice in my dad's original practice. We acquired another one. When you acquire an existing practice, you are consuming the patients that dentist had. And, but our ratio for patients in Pennington, New Jersey to dentists is like 1 to 1,000. So to catch our audience up, is that a good ratio, 1 to 1,000?
It's okay. It should, but it should be much higher.
Yeah,
if you want to be safe. But the better thing is that but it's also what I bought. I didn't buy an expensive practice. I bought plumbing. I got, the doctor that I bought from, and hopefully he's not listening, I couldn't verify his numbers. He had his practice manager, he didn't have practice management software.
What was it collecting when you purchased it?
I don't even know. It was probably in the 300s, but his tax returns were bogus. So, but I knew, and I knew that there was population over there. I knew there was underserved, and I knew that I was buying this practice for less than it would cost to build.
Right. I mean, that's a key. You make it. So I still do involved with brokerage and transitions, and dentists should be open-minded to treatment plan their dreams. And now we're just still talking about the first practice. We'll get to how you bought 8, but don't necessarily always knock a $300,000 practice, because like you said, it's less than what it costs to build, and some patients come with it, right? And some patients come with it.
You're not even giving it. That's where the value is. It's gold.
Yeah.
That $300,000 practice, especially with a doctor who is not using technology, it's not using practice management software, that has a darkroom still. It's still developing film. There's a ton of dentistry left on the table. And what happened with this practice and a bunch of the other ones that I bought afterwards is that $300,000 practice is closer to $1 million practice within the first year or two.
Now, this is awesome. Now, tell us, if someone's watching and a dental student, a new dentist, saying, okay, you buy this $300,000 practice, what are some of the fundamental chips to making it grow? Is this marketing? Is this
zero? So zero marketing, first of all. If you have a certain amount of revenue, you already have a captive audience where if you do your dentistry, you'll gain patients. The focus is, firstly, you have to be clinically sound.
All right.
Now, what I was back then is not what I was now.
When did you graduate from dental school?
Like 2010.
2010, and you did a GPR.
Yes.
Where did you do your GPR?
What?
Where'd you do your GPR?
Harlem Hospital.
Now, these are how these shows go. I always try to add value to the questions I get. I did a multiple year GPR. I learned how to place implants back in 2002, where that was a big deal. And even though I'm not placing implants today, I'm planning cases. That experience was transformative for me for so many levels. And I know you're in New York where a GPR is required, but if a 4th year dental student says to you, Dr. Mark, I did 22 crowns, I did 86 fillings, I don't need a GPR, do I? Tell our audience the benefits of a GPR for a dental student today.
Yeah, GPR, I mean, by the way, my father did a GPR in the 70s.
Yeah.
And this is what he was telling me his whole life, that year of learning without any pressure of if you do right or wrong. I mean, obviously you want to do right, but meaning it's not your patient, it's the hospital's patient. When you have a chance to learn and do things the right way, that gives you the ability to be a much better doctor when you go out into private practice.
I love that. The GPR, learning without pressure. And the thing that I don't think people understand about GPRs and AGDs is it's the patient training, because in dental schools, they sit for 3-hour denture appointments. And then in private practice, they expect you to be on your game. But these GPR AGD patients are trained that another dentist will walk into the operatory and help with this implant. Another dentist will walk into the operatory and help with this crown, but they're in good hands. So you get to go out of your comfort zone in what I consider to be the most ideal environment for a dentist at that time in their career.
I couldn't agree more. I absolutely could not agree more. Right? And it's strange that it's like New York and California are the only states in the country that have this requirement. But at the same time,
there's a dentist I want to introduce you. So he's doing a GPR in New York. He came to Dental Nachos last year and said, I want to be your intern. Amazing guy. I won't say his name on here, but I'm just think he's awesome. He goes, I want to be your intern. I want to make some extra money. I said, what are you doing after dental school? He goes, I'm going to go right to practice. I go, why aren't you doing a GPR? He goes, because people tell me you don't need GPRs. I go, oh, who told you that? He goes, my friends in dental school. And I said, they don't know anything either. Okay. And now he's at a GPR in New York because of that one conversation with me. And what I tell people is, you got your whole life to be in practice. You got decades. Invest this 1 year in yourself. And to kind of bring it back to your practices, you only hire people out of GPRs and AGDs because in your state it's required. Is that?
That's correct. But even if I was not in a state that required it, I would really think twice about hiring somebody who did not.
I actually don't consider it because one of the things that I'll share is it's not only just about the clinical growth, it's about the professional growth. It's about asking questions. It's about learning to be a bigger, stronger doctor. And this is what I want to share in an authentic way. It could be spicy. When you do a GPR AGD, you know how to get feedback. Somebody says, this is not right. You got to do it this way. In dental school, it's a wild world, right? You have all these different instructors with all different voices. And in a GPR, you kind of have this magical group of attendings that really get you trained on how to deal with feedback in a way that's growth-minded, not critical. So that is my rant on GPR. Now I'll go back to you.
Well, let's go a little tangent here because the environment right now is that the GPRs in New York are not filling up. And which is fascinating, but it is because the DSOs are offering them more money, new grads more money to kind of do a GPR by them. I don't know if it's the same, but
well, I'll tell you this: there's someone on Dental Nachos. I'll say his name, Dr. Parth. He applied to 42 jobs. He went on many interviews. Amazing guy. Did an AGD in Iowa. He placed 35 implants. So at his job, he's actually doing implants in the real world, and his D4 counterpart is doing their first crowns. So what I'm sharing is when you go, this group hires both in PA, right? They hire out of dental school and they hire out of residencies. But when you come with a skill set, especially being able to remove teeth, do bone grafting, you're able to produce more in a patient-centered way. And there are awesome groups striving to teach people in the private practice world. But to me, it's just not the same as that magical year.
Correct. And I mean, it's the same concept of like treatment planning. You got to slow down to speed up sometimes.
Yeah,
take a step back. Just take a look at everything, learn what you need to learn. And then when the time to go, it's go time.
So I love our tangent, but now back, you got this first practice, you go build it from 300 to $1 million. This is back in like 2014 or something? 2012. And you're doing this, and then you say to yourself, I want to have another practice. What made you want to say that?
Oh, that's a great question. So one was diversification. I wanted to be, and this first practice was a Medicaid-based practice. And I wanted to buy another practice that wasn't just solely based on the government, because the government, they have no control. Furthermore, but I didn't buy my second practice for a bunch of years. I did a construction first because I was out of space. I doubled. I went from a 3-chair office to an 8-chair office, and and I made every mistake in the book on that construction, but it still served its purpose of having 8 chairs. But 3 years later, I bought my second practice.
Gotcha.
And this is when my brother, who's also a dentist who works with me, was coming around, and
Gotcha.
and my thought process back then was that there was this office is not big enough, maybe not big enough to support 2 families.
Yeah.
So we bought a second practice.
It's interesting how parallel our stories were. In 2010, we bought a satellite practice because my brother was finishing his GPR, and there wasn't going to be enough for 3 dentists. And one of the cool things about these smaller acquisitions is you are right in that you can buy a $300,000 practice and transform it to $1 million. But if you're in a densely populated area like I am, that $300,000 practice is usually that way for a reason. And people can't always purchase that one in hopes of growing it in a populated area. So it kind of stays as this smaller satellite.
Well, so yes, but no. I'll agree with you, but no. It depends what you're doing there. So some of the things that we do there that's very interesting is that we're very big on digital dentistry.
Gotcha.
And that we're doing same day crowns, and this is when we started doing that in 2015. We started
The second practice. We had the second practice.
Correct. I at that point I was doing I was scanning with Trios and milling with Roland Mill or E4D. It was a whole whatever. Ended up with Sarek. But the point is, we started doing same day crowns, and that was, the office looked like crap, but we were using the best technology.
Gotcha. And that's why actually you can share with us, because now we'll get up to is that, and I understand why dentists would be confused. Do you want nice paintings on the wall, or do you want really nice technology in your operatory?
Right. So where I was, the patients really appreciated the dentistry that we're doing, that things that they only had to come in one day for a crown, that they had pictures on the wall, they had digital pictures, they were able to see things were fitting, there was less adjustments. That is my marketing. That's how word of mouth grew from that, and these practices exploded from that.
And also I'll share with you, and I get it, because I did a merger, I did a chart sale, I did this. Older dentists, they're tired, right? And it's unfair to call them watchodontists, but I'm going to guess that there was more dentistry to be done on those patients when you took over than the previous dentist.
They weren't even taking x-rays. Remember, I'm just saying, like, you could call it, I mean, I'm not going to, again, it's not, I don't know if it's negligent, but the thing is this, they don't have the same tools that I was bringing in.
Yeah.
So what I would tell, so when patients would say to me, hey, why are you telling me all this stuff now? What about the other doctor last year? He didn't see a problem. Well, I'm like, we now know. And then I show them the picture. This is a picture of your tooth. And you see that crack in it, or that hole in it, that brown spot. That's the problem.
I'm a big patient communication person. I know you're good, but as someone who's also acquired practices where the patient says, why didn't the other dentist notice this? This is what I say, 2 sentences. This is what I see now. Let's plan to make it better together, right? Because it doesn't throw the other guy under the bus. And also, if that other guy was there, or female dentist, they might have said, that's Millie. She said no to a crown 15 times, right? So some of these patients have selective memory at times. So, but your point here is, when you acquire a practice where a dentist has been there for a long time, you are going to have to deal with that question. Am I correct, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we got 2 practices now, 2015. Yeah. Keep us going through the journey of getting up to 8.
Well, there's also, it wasn't, remember, this is not all me. At some, we're getting to the point where I start taking on partners, one being my brother, and then another partner. And I also did something very unusual, where a lot of doctors may or may not do this, and it really worked for me, but it may not work for everybody. So I made my brother an equal partner with me.
Oh.
I gave up the equity, even though I started it. I know I needed help. There's certain things that I'm good at, and I know there's certain things that he's good at. And even though we disagree on everything, we happen to work really well together. So we partner up, and we buy, when we're buying practice number 3, literally 10 months later, all in Orange County, New York, all within 25 minutes of each other. Again, same story. Undervalued practice, not a PPO practice, doing maybe $400,000. It's a 2-chair office, a room for 3 chairs, but we know the place is dynamite. We know that the things are being undiagnosed and whatnot. And again, within that first year, we bought that practice for $250,000. It was doing 400. We did $1 million in our first year. Same story.
And now I want to share, and I know I have also from Rondi listening, and people make this joke about parenting. So when you go from 2 to 3 kids, you're outnumbered, right? You're outnumbered.
Man to zone, man. You go to man to zone.
Yeah. So now it's 2 to 6 for Rondi. So you have to tap how she deals with that. But in a good question for my audience, you and your brother, my brother and I are equal partners. You own 2 practices, you buy a third, and now you have another practice, and you have more practices than partners. Tell us just a little bit about how you were managing that, whether it was managing the team, doing the dentistry. Did you have associates? Because that starts, I believe, create more complexity than the
Yeah. No, we had a few associates at the time, and there were definitely a lot of moving parts. And at that point, we already started thinking about centralizing. I made a terrible purchase with Dendrix Enterprise way back. Got off of that, and we're an open dental now, but there are certain things I put in place to help manage all those offices. And I had a very, very, very strong team. Some of my original employees are still with me.
That's awesome.
And from those days, maybe one is gone now, but for the most part, they're all with me, and we really, we grew together. And me and my brother we never really worked together at that time. We were in different offices, and we had an associate that we were eyeing to be in a partner that we really liked, that we've known for a long time. And that's actually what happened when we bought our fourth practice, is that we took on a third partner.
And that's what I think is a cool part of this dynamic dental world, I'll call it, right? I was at the Bulletproof Summit with Peter Bolden and Craig Spodak. Peter has 7 practices. He gives some ownership to his associates. At the time of this recording, he goes, I'm not selling to a DSO anytime soon, right? Then I meet my Rodeo Dental friends. They have 50 practices and they are a DSO. Now you're already building an organization where you're creating creative ownership opportunities. So when you talk to that associate, Marc, I think this is so valuable. I hope my team pulls it out. You talk to this associate and say, hey, we want you to partner in this practice. Why did the associate say, I can just do it just like you. I'm going to go buy my own practice. How did you paint that picture of collaboration?
Well, we worked together for a year. Then he left, went to Florida to work with his father-in-law and try to buy that practice. That was a disaster. Came back to us, and then we made him the offer and said, hey, this is what it is. Let's do in one practice at first. Let's do a good year, and then we'll have that conversation. That year was really good, and then he became a full partner on everything. And again, we were basically at 4 practices, and I had 3 full-time partners. It was crazy.
So 3 and 4. Now this is 2015. Now bring us.
This is already like 2017 or so.
17. So now we got 6 years, 4 more practices. Tell us about the next 4.
So before we bought the next one in 2018. Before we did it, our financials were atrocious. We're not business. We are dentists and sort of businessmen, but we don't know accrual accounting, any of that stuff. So my brother and my brother said, we're not buying another practice till our numbers are crystal clear. And so we actually hired a CFO at the time, who so again, someone that we knew, but not so well, but now we knew the right personality, and probably another really important person to bring into the business now, because now everything is clear. I have someone taking care of all of my financials. I have someone who's able to speak the language to the banks, because I didn't even tell you all the problems I had with Bank of America back then. But that's a whole other story. But now I had someone who actually dealt that part of the business,
right?
With paying bills on time, making sure insurance is taken care of, making sure that we're able to get financing, all that stuff. Where literally, when I'm trying to do a root canal, the last thing I want to do is sign a document or scan a document in.
Yes, I'll say I'm a kind of a catchphrase guy, but if my team can share this in the chat. As a multi-practice owner, if you cannot delegate, you'll be destroyed. You'll be destroyed emotionally. You'll be destroyed spiritually. You'll be destroyed mentally. You'll be destroyed family time, because what you're saying is right. And that happens even now to a degree, but just less when you have other people. When you own more than one practice, people are coming at you all day long with stuff that needs to be solved that have nothing to do with teeth. Would you agree with that?
1000%. 1000%.
So this CFO was a brilliant hire by you guys, because you said, hey, we need someone who doesn't drill on teeth to help us run this business.
That is correct.
And what I'm sharing is, it's more than an office manager. Office manager doesn't play that role. I actually believe, true, the office manager is pointed at managing the team and the patients, right? And you're pointed at patient care. You need this CFO person, if you can correct me if I'm wrong, just pointed at the business functions without essentially team members or patients in front of their face to distract them. Is that a good way?
That is correct. That is absolutely correct.
So you got the CFO and you're off and running. So you got CFO, 3 partners,
right,
4 practices, and now you're going to add 4 more.
Right. Well, and also in the meantime, remember, so we're doing these same-day crowns. We started building our own in-house lab. That we're doing, that it's a separate business within the, it's a vertical business, supporting just ourselves. And but again, the same. But here's there's this theme that keeps on coming up, is that we were struggling with how to create some of the partnerships and what to do, and what we always ended up deciding on is including everybody and everything. Meaning, meaning that you say you're a part of the top DSO, the management company. Anytime we grow, you're growing with us. So there's never a question, that you're not part of the rest of the business.
Gotcha.
Everybody's included, and that is really important, because there's some private equity groups and DSOs that really put their doctors only in one place and really have nothing to do with the rest of the business. And if you're not getting the attention, you feel like, what the heck?
Right.
So it leads to disharmony.
For sure.
And that is a very really, it's a very important point. You need to include your team, because you're only able to do this other thing because you have stability somewhere else.
Exactly. And that's why bringing people along for the ride is key, or else that also can just destroy momentum. I destroy momentum. So now you have this team, and 2017, these four practices, these startups, their acquisitions, a combination. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So everything I've done is an acquisition, but we're getting to the point now where these practices that I've bought, we've run out of space also. So now, this was a 2 or 3 chair office. I'm maxed out. I can't do anymore, but I have patients knocking on the door. So when I started really spending money, is that I started building out new spaces within a certain amount, a few miles away from my existing offices, or right down the block even, and took a 3-chair office to a 15-chair office.
Awesome.
Or a 2-chair office to a 17-chair office.
And are these still in what you would call favorable dentist
same spot?
Same spot.
Same spot. And so right now, right before COVID, we bought office 2018. We bought office number 5. We bought number 6 literally right before COVID, and right when COVID started was also when we started all this construction. So now since COVID started, we did 1, 2. We're in the middle of our 3rd construction. We have 2 completed. We're almost done with our 3rd, and we're about to start our 4th construction. And this is actually the fascinating part, is playing this game of building out these practices, because you're playing a real estate game and I guess a dental debt game.
Anyway, any question I ask you too, you can always just answer in very evergreen ways if you don't want to mention exact things. But funding of all this, funding your dreams, how are you convincing people to give you money?
All right. So I started with Bank of America. And then they became, even though I love Chad, I'm sure you know him.
I know Chad, yes.
I know he's not there anymore.
The trade team, they're like professional athletes, those bankers, right? You get traded to a new team. Oh, I thought you loved the Sixers. Well, I'm now over here on the Knicks, right? So
and Bill Murray and everybody and that whole.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah, they're good guys. However, they tied my hands behind my back, unfortunately. Because I didn't fit their model. Because I was buying practices with not enough cash flow, so they wouldn't give me another loan. And then even though I was growing them, they weren't figuring out my my tax. Since I didn't have a tax return, they didn't count my cash flow. Either way, I got out of Bank of America. Not only that, I got kicked out of Bank of America.
Okay, gotcha. So kicked out of the club, but then you need someone to give you money.
Yeah, so then we went over to another. Then my CFO, we refinanced with Berkshire Bank.
Gotcha.
And M&T we did with a lot of the real estate stuff. They were both fantastic. And right now we're in the process of refinancing with Citi, which is also pretty impressive. They're throwing out some nice interest numbers right now. I mean,
I'm assuming though, just to kind of reinforce this idea, you wouldn't be able to do this without your CFO, right? Your CFO.
No question. It's nothing to talk about.
I mean, the way I kind of think of this a little bit, Mark, and I like these brainstorming, it's like, if I give a patient a treatment plan for a full mouth implant case, right? And I say, hey, I'm just going to make your teeth great and you're going to be happy at the end. The patient is not going to have confidence in me unless my patient care coordinator comes in and really shows her A to Z what's going to happen. And my sense is you're kind of like that with the banks, and your CFO is like the patient care coordinator, be like, these guys, here's their money. This is what's happening. This is why we're doing it. This
right. And he played, and he played banks against each other. And again, he speaks the language. A dentist could talk to a dentist and explain to them, hey, this is a deep cavity. It's getting close to the nerve, and explain all the technical terms. So too, an accountant or a CFO could talk to a bank, explain them all the technical terms, and get the best deal.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So now tell me what's been, when I was at Dykema, Rondi said, you got to meet Marc. How did you get to know Rondi, and what role did she play in your practice ownership journey?
I bumped into her. I met her in at Amplify in Tampa, like a year and a half ago. First time I met her. But I was very fascinated by her story. I invest in a lot of people. That's how I hire them. I hire them personality, and I grow them, and I teach them. And she's a success story. The fact that she started as an assistant and worked her way all the way up to doing mergers and acquisitions for multiple DSOs, and beyond. And I always love hearing how people have grown and their stories and what made them successful. And I think her story happens to be very inspiring.
I totally agree. And one of the things I talk about is my concept of ROI. Which is not necessarily what people think of return on investment. I think about relationships, opportunities, and the impact you have on people. And one of the things you want to be, whether you're a new dentist, someone who works with dentists, is create relationships that you take with you wherever you go, personally and professionally. And I think the best people in the dental space do that really, really well, because things change all the time, but how people feel about you and how they look at you and what they want, how they want to put you on their team, right back, this is so key. And I think she exemplifies that in an awesome way. And I'm so glad she connected us here. No, I still want to ask you a few more questions, but I just want to pause for that. Now, you own 8 practices, you have 2 dental labs. I just want to shift a little gears for like 10 minutes, shift gears. You hire associates, okay? How many associates work for you right now?
We're about 14.
14. So you got 14
13 or 14, something like that right now.
So if someone's watching in who's a D4, a dentist who hates their job, a D1 dental student, someone hiring associates, and they're thinking, this is Dr. Marc Faber, he's got 8 practices, 14 associates. What do you look for when you sit across from an associate and interview them? And I know these are cliche questions, but you interview associates to put on your team. You don't put everyone on your team. So how could you talk to an associate who wants to make themselves as attractive as possible for a practice owner?
There are a few core values that we're looking for. Number one is humility. We don't need to know it all. Yeah. I share what I know, I share what I don't know. And we're working, everybody here is working together and collaborating and trying to do and work together. So we need people that have that humility. They don't think they're better than anybody else. We need people also that are nice, that smile, they're pleasant to be around. Yeah. You can't smile. It's just like, it's terrible. Like, what patient's going to want to see you? The least important thing is actually your clinical skills, because we could teach those. Right. And we could support you on it. The other thing we're looking for are people who are responsible. I'm not saying like you have to have certain things in your life, but I'm saying that they are responsible people, and that they're committed. I mean, the show up ability, it's a word I can come up with, this, show up plus ability. It's a big part of being successful in the dental space, because we see our customers face to face every day. And, as someone who's owned multiple practices and hired many people, I've had people who have awesome attitudes at times and awesome abilities, but they have a show up ability problem and they have a commitment problem. And you see that whether it's from professional sports to multiple dental offices, it's something that just doesn't work out when you're building a team. And the other thing we're looking for are people that are hungry, that want to learn, that want to become the best dentist they could be. And the two-way street to this, Marc, because we were talking about, what do you do to invest in your associates in teaching them? And you can tell me about clinical, you can tell me about business. Yeah. So, you're going to hire somebody probably in the next 6 months for whatever reason, and you're going to insert them into your team. What are they going to learn? We are, me and my partners and a few others now are invest in every doctor that comes through the door. We spend a tremendous amount of time with them during clinical hours and after hours on the phone, preparing doctors for their cases, giving them tips and shortcuts, helping them do root canals and posts and crowns and bone grafts and implants. We send all of our doctors go to CERC Doctors Club in whether it's in Arizona or in North Carolina. If doctors want to place implants, we make sure they have the proper education, not just from us, but clinical education, whether it's from the NYU program or the Maxi courses. And then we send them over to what's it called, to the Dominican Republic or Colombia or wherever to place a lot of implants. And then when they come to place, there's someone there with them watching them. We really want our doctors to be productive, and we want to give them the tools to be productive and not say, hey, here's a drill, go figure it out. We also teach them how to treatment plan. And how to talk to patients. We spend a lot of time on that because there are obviously, there's a lot of skills that are involved in that that can make or break a doctor.
I mean, there's that. They've had that. I mean, I know Rhonda's still sticking with us, and I hope she enjoys all my analogies to parenting. But they always say it takes a village to raise a child, and it really takes a team to raise an associate. Because I mean, the clinical reps that dental students get are not adequate for surviving in the real world. And then there's totally a lack of attention on the treatment planning and patient communication. So it's easy to feel lost as an associate out there. And you guys look like you embrace them and make sure you guide them in the right way, which is just the magic.
I mean, tonight in like 2 hours, we have a doctor's meeting, clinical doctor meeting, where we present clinical topics and go over stuff as a group. We're gonna barbecue beforehand, and but it's good. We do it every month. Now, furthermore, on the back end of things, not every associate has stayed, but we've had good relationships with them, and I've helped now 3 doctors that have worked with me to buy their first practice.
That's awesome.
And second and third sometimes also, and it's something. I teach. I've been teaching a business course in Turo Dental School for the last couple of years. Just a couple of lectures. Now I've done mostly on Zoom, and a lot of these topics that we're talking about come up in my lectures, but there's no harm in helping people, and there's so much opportunity that it's like, even if someone would open up next door, it doesn't even matter.
Right. I love that abundance mindset. That's the saddest part about dental school to me, is just the scarcity, compete instead of collaborate. I mean, I it's not that I'm here always to criticize dental schools, but I just know that if I have a pizza party for my 5-year-old and her friends, and there's 10 kids and 8 pieces of pizza, 2 kids are not going to get pizza, and that is going to be a problem. And I think a lot of times in dental school, when it comes to the number of patients that they truly have available for people to learn, there's a scarcity, and that creates, in my day of dental school, this very weird Hunger Games mentality of dental school that it looks like you look to fight against. You literally have dentists watching your associates place implants over their shoulder, even when they've been trained, which I just think represents the best of supporting people.
Yeah, I mean, again, we're not over their shoulder. We're looking at the CT and the X-rays. We're not unless they ask us for help. We're not there, but we are there if they need us.
But over the shoulder could be outside the operatory. Over the shoulder could be looking at a case before they go into it, right?
Correct. I was taking it literally. Like we're not.
And I was saying it that way too, and he didn't think it's like, right. It is weird about dentistry, Marc. Like, I'm going to get my hair cut for this trip in a couple of hours. If I go there and I see a new barber, and the experienced one says, see the new one, I would do that, right? That's my personality. And let's say the new one's cutting my hair, and in their mind they go, I don't know if this is as good as it could be. And then they go over to the experienced barber and said, hey, come check on Paul. I want this to turn out as best as possible. And the experienced barber helps them. What's kind of sad is I lose confidence in that new barber, even though they ask for help. And I think in dentistry, that's painful. In medicine, it's better, right? You got 6 people around a patient, they're all sharing. But I think whatever you guys do, and that's why outside the operatory over your shoulder is sometimes very valuable. I'll say to my associate, I want the patient to stay confident in you. You can do this. Let me just tell you about the impression coping over here, and then you can go in and do it yourself. And I just think we need more of that in our dental space.
Oh, there's no other way to do it than the way we're doing it.
Um,
And I believe this is why we've had a lot of success finding doctors. I never really had to put out an ad, never had to really, I make some phone calls, but I've never really had to chase anyone down. We've been, I've had more doctors wanting to work with us than we've had room for the last year or two.
That's awesome. That means you created a great culture. And our last thing, I just want to ask you two things. One, if somebody wanted to reach out to you to learn about your journey, ask you a question, what would be the best way for them to do that? We're not done yet. Best way.
Yeah, reach out. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn is probably the best. I'm all over it.
LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn. Yeah, just go through LinkedIn and you message me and I'll get back.
Dr. Marc Faber, reach out to us here.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that you've shared, you enjoy the Dental Nachos community. What is it about the Dental Nachos community that you really think is creating a great space for dentists of all ages and stages?
You guys actually ask really tough questions and you put out difficult things out there that not everyone thinks about. I mean, or things that people sweep under the rug.
Yes.
And it makes me think about things in different ways. And that's why even though you guys post a billion things, I still read them.
I appreciate it. And that's what I really strive to do, is have these spicy conversations with a foundation of still caring for each other, because there's a lot of wild things happening in many professions, but especially the dental profession. One joke I make for the dental profession for dentists is, we can't fight about whether you have to go back to the office, because we have to be at the office, right? But I am sure that if there was an accounting nachos, there would be a lot of spicy conversations about whether you have to show up at the office or not, right? Can you work remote? I used to, I bet you there's 60-year-old accountants saying we used to come to the office every day, and there's 30-year-olds saying I can do my job from Zoom. Why do you make me drive in? And I bet you they both have good reasons, right? If you don't ever go into the office and you ever develop relations with people, but if you spend half your life commuting, that could be a waste. So then over back in Dental Nachos, I think I really appreciate it. I'm striving to create a platform where people can talk about stuff and learn. And, I really appreciate you saying a different way.
And the other thing that you guys do is that you have the pulse of the dental students. Dental students have been, used and abused for
I think also I like to, and I don't say this in some, people go, Paul, you baby these students. I go, they need some TLC. It's a brutal experience. And there are newest colleagues. And while much of this is altruistic, some of it is selfish. Who's going to buy people's practices? Who's going to work for people? Who's going to take your place? I mean, our colleagues that are 10, 20, 30 years out should care, because it's good to care about what happens to their newest colleagues. And I say, if you want someone to buy your practice one day, share why there's benefits to private practice, not against the DSO. And if you want someone to work for your DSO, share how you create a path where practice ownership is creative. So I really appreciate that, Marc. This is an awesome interview. Stick around for a minute. We're going to go off of Facebook Live. Dental Nachos, Dentist Job Connect World. If we can help you in any way, reach out to us at dentistjobconnect.com. So appreciate your time. So appreciate Rondi connecting us. Thanks so much, Marc.
My pleasure. This is awesome.